We're going to start now, okay? Good evening. 7 o'clock. And I would like to call the Inland Wetlands Commission public hearing to order. For tonight's public hearing, we have 2021-3 four-lot subdivision on Peters Lane, located approximately 1,100 feet northwesterly from the intersection of Peters Lane and Harvest Ridge Road. 525, 545, 575 Peters Lane and abuts 650 Peters Lane. Assessors map 50.19, block 2, lot 19, applicant JRB Holdings Company LLC is the applicant or his representative here. We step up and give, it's not my rule, but the town says you got to wear a mask in here. And if I got to wear one, you got to wear one.
As you know, I came in here wearing one, so.
Everybody doesn't have, but now they do.
And good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Superintendent Kerrigan, and Madam Clerk. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Alter and Pearson. And can you hear me okay? I haven't done this with a mask before. I've done some in person, but most remote since March of 2020. So if you can't hear me or if it's not coming through, Kelly, if you could let me know and we'll adjust just for recording purposes, make sure that you're getting it. Housekeeping matter. Mr. Chairman, we do have our notice letters that we sent to abutting property owners with receipts and green cards per section 9.4 of your regulations. These were emailed to Superintendent Kerrigan, but I do have the originals here. Should I go this way with it?
Pass them over.
I'll just leave it on the table. Right here? Come through. And if I have to pause and take the glasses off because they're fogging off, just please bear with me. So,
You know what we should do?
again, my name is Chris Smith, and I represent JRB Holdings Company LLC concerning this application seeking approval of regulated activities associated with a four-lot subdivision of an approximate 10-acre parcel of land located on Peters Lane here in Stratford. What I'd like to do is provide an overview of the application to the Commission before turning it over to our experts. The application was submitted earlier this year, and as indicated in Ms. Kerrigan's staff report dated August 18, 2021, the Commission requested that a study be performed relative to the subject property to determine if acid rock drainage associated with the mineral pyrite was a concern. This was done, and a report has been submitted by WSP dated May 3rd, 2021, that we'll address shortly. The matter was scheduled for a hearing last month, as you're aware, and at my request, the legal notice was republished, the notices were resent by us, and the opening of the hearing was postponed to this evening, and I would like to thank the Commission members and Ms. Kerrigan for accommodating my request at that time. I would like to provide a summary of our presentation and then again turn the podium over to our experts. Again, the property comprises approximately 10 acres. There is no conduct proposed with the four-lot subdivision within a wetlands or watercourse, in other words, no direct impacts. However, a substantial amount of the property is within your rather extensive 250-foot upland review area of an on-site wetlands that includes a Tier 1 vernal pool. Therefore, my client needs approval from this Commission for that conduct that comprises regulated activities. And again, as you are well aware, I sat on Wetlands Commission for 16 years. Wetlands Commissions regulate the regulated activities associated with the four lots. It's not the four lots, the subdivision aspect of it is for the Planning Commission, but we have to deal with the regulated activities with this Commission. The wetlands were reviewed most recently by William Kenny of William Kenny Associates LLC on September 24th, 2020, and the vernal pool was surveyed again on April 2nd, 2021 by Eric Davison, both of whom I understand are wetlands and soil scientists. However, as you will hear from our wetlands and soil scientist with us this evening, Michael Klein of Davison Environmental, the proposed 4-lot residential subdivision will not result in an adverse impact to a wetlands or watercourse, including the vernal pool. Indeed, the vernal pool will retain the characteristics required for it to remain categorized as a Tier 1 vernal pool. And Mr. Klein will address this shortly, and we'll be referring to a report by Davison Environmental dated April 22nd, 2021 that you have and is part of the record. However, first, with the permission of the chair, we will hear from David Bjorklund, our professional civil engineer, who will walk you through the proposed subdivision, and then we'll hear from Mr. Klein, who will address the issues associated with the proposed regulated activities, and then we'll follow with a summary of the WSP report. So with the permission of the chair, I'd like to turn the podium over to Mr. David Bjorklund, and he will walk you through the subdivision application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is David Bjorklund. I'm the president of the firm Spath Bjorklund Associates. We have offices in Monroe, and I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut. On this application this evening, representing JRB Holdings, LLC, and this proposal is for a 4-lot, single-family residential subdivision on the north side of Peters Lane. The site contains 9.94 acres. There's 2.55 acres of wetlands on the site. Just to get the commission oriented with the site, on the bottom of the map is Peters Lane. The boundary, we're bounded on the west side by there's a single-family residence located here. Then the next property adjoiner is the town of Stratford, Roosevelt Forest, and this is a large wetland area that proceeds southerly into the property. At the north end of the property, we're still bounded by Roosevelt Forest in the town of Stratford. That runs all the way around here. You can see this is the edge of the wetlands, and all of this below here is the wetland area, or the upland area. To the east, we're bounded by Cemetery Brook. There is a 100-year floodplain associated with Cemetery Brook. We are not impacting that the floodplain. You can also see on the map we delineated the regulated upland areas, and taking the 250 foot from the wetlands into account, there's a little corner on lot 1 that is not within your regulated area, and there's this little sliver here that was not within the regulated area. Other than that, everything that we're proposing on the property is within the regulated area. Proposals to develop this property into 4 lots. They're going to range in size from 1.15 acres to 3.3 acres. They're going to be in conformance with the town's planning and zoning regulations. We are also planning on needing a little over an acre of land in the back of the parcel here to the town of Stratford. That would then become part of Roosevelt Forest. plan package. An erosion control plan is also detailed in E-1. Notes and specifications with regards to implementing and managing the erosion control are noted on sheets D1 and D2. And also noted in there is a lot development sequence as to how the lots will be developed. L1 details a landscaping, a typical landscaping plan for the development. That's also part of the plan package. As far as the alternate plans, we have submitted an alternate plan. There is enough room on this site to develop a 5-lot subdivision. We've developed an alternate plan that indicates that we could serve lot, what I call the rear lot, the larger lot, lot 2, by constructing a driveway in this area, which is immediately adjacent to the wetlands. And the alternate to that we developed is to move the driveway over here to the center of the property, and that allows us to create an area here. See, in this area here, instead of building a driveway in this area here, we've got an area of undisturbed land, which will serve as a buffer between the edge of the wetland and the development area that is immediately upgraded. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to introduce Mike Klein now, so we can review the work that he's done on the property. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name's Michael Klein. I'm a biologist and a soil scientist. My office is in West Hartford. My business for many years was known as Environmental Planning Services. Recently, in the last 5 years, it's been transitioned to one of my colleagues, Eric Davison, and the business is now called it's now called Davison Environmental. Same people, just a difference in ownership. I am hopefully going to retire one of these days. We've looked at property in this general vicinity in town for a number of different landowners over the last 15 years or so. This site in particular, we've looked at since about 2013. Recently, I was on the property in December to verify the wetland delineation that was done by Bill Kenny, and I believe the wetland boundary that's shown is substantially correct. And then more recently than that, Eric Davison from my office was here to do a detailed vernal pool survey to update work that he had done in 2013. There's a single continuous wetland system that's on the site. Shown in this area. It's a forested wetland, very typical, vegetated with red maple, sweet pepper bush, winterberry, high bush blueberry, and skunk cabbage on a wetland soil that's known as Ridgeberry Leisterd Whitman. Again, the most common wetland soil type in Connecticut. This is part of a much larger wetland system associated with Cemetery Brook, and it does provide values at a principal level for many wetland functions. The detailed vernal pool survey that we did in April, building on work that was done in 2013, identified that this is a Tier 1 vernal pool. It's located in this area here, shown as a solid red line. It's an oval-shaped pool that's embedded within a larger wetland system. We call those cryptic vernal pools or embedded vernal. Cryptic or embedded vernal pools. It does support breeding by the two most common vernal pool indicator species. And as a Tier 1 pool, there are some specific criteria that are contained in the Clemens and Calhoun Best Development Practices Manual, which is the de facto overriding guidance for assessing the quality of and potential impacts to vernal pools from development. All of the activities that are proposed on the site are consistent with that Best Development Practices Manual. There's a very small increase in development within the area between 100 and 750 feet. There's no activity within 100 feet of the vernal pool proposed, which is what's called the vernal pool envelope, the most critical area, but then within the larger area, it's called the critical terrestrial habitat, which extends out an additional 650 feet. The change in development is very small. It goes from about 10% to 12%. The critical number there is considered 25%. In other words, 25% development within the critical terrestrial habitat zone would not result in a significant adverse impact on the pool. So in our opinion, the plan as shown will not adversely affect the vernal pool. As Dave mentioned, there's no activity proposed within the wetland itself. The erosion sediment controls and stormwater controls that are shown are appropriate and adequate to prevent any indirect impacts during the construction phase of the project. As I said, we have worked in this area for a number of years, and we actually identified eastern box turtles in this general vicinity. Off-site, but along utility right-of-way that is east of the property. We did not identify any box turtles on this property, but we can't rule them out. So we have proposed in our report a box turtle protection plan that would prevent any adverse impacts during construction. And in addition, that would also limit any potential impacts during construction on other reptiles and amphibians that might be in the area. So in conclusion, this 4-lot subdivision on about 10 acres of land has been designed to avoid any direct impacts to wetlands or watercourses, including the vernal pool and also the vernal pool envelope, which extends out an additional 100 feet. The plan conforms to the recommendations of the Best Development Practices Manual by Clemens and Calhoun, the authoritative document on impacts to vernal pools in southern New England. There's a robust sediment and erosion control plan and stormwater treatment measures that Dave Bjorklund just described to you. We've made recommendations about a box turtle protection plan. The plan is designed, including implementation of those recommendations, would result in no significant adverse impacts on wetland functions and values. I think Christy's going to summarize, and then we'll be available for questions.
Again, for the record, Chris Smith, I did indicate that an acid rock drainage investigation and report was generated and submitted to the commission. It was prepared by WSP. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have anybody from, a representative from WSP here this evening, but what I would like to do is summarize the report, which again is part of the record, and I believe that each one of you may have a copy of it. At the outset, the report indicates that there was a site investigation that included 28 test pits and a review of the applicable published reports, including the Connecticut DEP, or DEEP. And again, I'd like to just walk you through the WSP report in a summary fashion. As the report indicates, acid rock drainage occurs primarily with the mineral pyrite, when it's exposed to water and air, and that's referenced at page 3. I know this commission is familiar, I think, with this. I know I've had to deal with this in the past with different commissions down here in Stratford with questions concerning ARD. Now, going to page 4 of the report, pyrite is not included as a primary or accessory mineral in any of the published geological material describing the 2 bedrock formations associated with the parcel. I'm just summarizing what's in the report. Number 3, there is no visual evidence of weathered pyrite on the property, indicating that over time there has been runoff where pyrite has shown up in the runoff through any of the rocks or the bedrock on the site. Number 4, the Connecticut Deeps recognize geological terrains as areas for potential concern concerning ARD do not include the subject property. Number 5, any site development where blasting or more likely rock removal by mechanical means will occur will not include crushing that might release pyrite during construction activities. And 6, any placement of removed rock will not occur within the site's water table or in immediate proximity to it, so there wouldn't be any runoff from any pyrite. And WSP in their report opines that if anything, there's trace amounts of pyrite that may be found. But according to, again, their site investigation, they did 28 test pits, and their review of the Connecticut Deep documents as well as other material does not indicate, and they haven't seen, any evidence of pyrite or ARD that would be associated with the site. They conclude in provide an opinion at page 4, quote, in our professional opinion, based on the information and assessment summarized above, there should be no significant adverse impact to the on-site wetlands from the proposed blasting and reuse of blasted rock on the property resulting from ARD or mobilization of iron in surface water and groundwater runoff. They do make a recommendation, however, and this is referenced in Ms. Kerrigan's report, quote, to confirm the absence and to further mitigate the potential for adverse impacts from ARD or mobilization of iron, WSP recommends that geologic observations be made during the rock removal from Lot 4 to confirm the absence of high levels of pyrite, and if discovered, to supervise removal and off-site disposal, not to be incorporated into the fill on the property, end of quote. So they do indicate that with the foundation surveys that they reviewed, that there's a possibility that a small portion of lot number 4 in the proximity of where the foundation will be located or is proposed on the plans, that there could be pyrite there, and they do indicate, again, if this commission were to see fit to render an approval, that there be a condition associated with that they be WSP, a representative from WSP, and I presume from the town, be present when that occurs to ensure that there isn't any pyrite associated with the rock when it's removed for the foundation for lot number 4. And for the record, my client would have no objection to that being included as a condition, nor the other conditions that Ms. Kerrigan made reference to in her staff report to this commission for this evening's public hearing. That does conclude our presentation. We look forward to any questions that you or the citizens and public may have. And thank you. And thank you again for postponing the opening of the public hearing until this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask the commissioners to hold their questions, and I'm going to open this up to the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Okay. Mr. Dancho, you'll be number first, I guess.
Do the same thing. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Greg Dancho. I live at 30 Ruby Lane, Stratford, and I'm Chair of the Stratford Conservation Commission. I thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening regarding 2021-3 4-lot residential subdivision on Peters Lane. This proposed subdivision would be one of the largest disturbances on pristine upland reserve lands that the Stratford has ever seen. The proposed statement that there is no activity proposed that will directly impact wetlands or a watercourse is strictly the applicant's opinion and not based on fact. The property is on fragile resource wetlands as well as a riverine complex next to Cemetery Brook, which has been designated as a FEMA-identified floodplain on the east side. Development of this property will have huge impact on these important wetlands. The July 9th storm flooded Cut Spring Road, and that development application guaranteed that this would not occur as water would divert to a retention pool. This did not happen. This proposal is for an approval to subdivide the property into 4 separate lots encompassing 10 acres, approximately 10 acres. Each single-family home will have on-site septic and wells. No other specifics on what will actually occur within these lots is clear. However, the developers are clear that once the subdivision is approved, the eventual homeowner will determine what is built. This may all need separate applications, but will be impossible to challenge owner usage once the area is approved for a subdivision, leaving the owner able to do what they want with their property. Levels of those disturbances are not always clear in the proposal, as these are conceptual house designs, and the future owners will come in with their own ideas and plans. The rear lot number 2 is unusual, and the alternative proposal, moving this lot closer to the river, is insulting in an environmental sense. The septic line coming from the property, going several hundred feet almost to Peters Lane before the leach field, must go through a great deal of rock ledge. Blasting will cause an issue with the water table, the effects of which are not known. If there is ever a failure in the septic line system, that entire line will need to be excavated to see where the failure is. The concern with iron pyrite and rock lever is being disturbed, causing environmental issue in the ponds in the area. As it was just stated, again, there's the pyrite. Once you blast and the water gets down in there, it's going to seep down in and follow its way down the water course underneath the ground, which you're not going to be able to see until it gets to the ponds. The Tier 1 vernal pool is identified within the wetlands complex, but is not in the site plans. These vernal pools can be considered endangered species and also most certainly are important to the ecosystem of the area. Eastern box turtle is an indicator species and a state species of special concern, has a habitat that cannot simply be replicated, and animals cannot simply be relocated. These animals cannot be moved to another location. Retention ponds and rain gardens proposed are completely unregulated and most likely will be deleted if this application is approved. We look forward to the applicant's clarification as this was dismissed at the first meeting and referred to the public hearing tonight. The town of Stratford has received state grants in the past to protect these areas with sensitive wildlife and to good effect. The protection of these environmental important lands is crucial not only for the wildlife's health and welfare, but in many cases also for our own. Securing this property as open space is the only alternative and should be pursued. Therefore, it is my opinion that this application be denied. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Good evening. I'm that better. Merrill Pruitt. I live on Peters Lane, 575 Peters Lane. I brought with me tonight a neighbor's letter, actually, and I'm just going to turn that in so that you can read it as part of the commission. And this neighbor lives at 690 Peters Lane, which is very close to the drawing I left. I think it's lot number 1. And this neighbor has details with photos showing the water level in that area and how it has increased over these last few years. And I'm certainly aware of that myself, living where I do, right across from some wetland there on Peters Lane. Our concern really is just, we're not against houses. We're not against people building houses in the area, but we are concerned about the wells and the water running downhill, protecting that land and the wildlife that live there. These are our concerns, and certainly this water is going to be There's going to be a lot of it. When that storm came through recently, I also have photos of that, that Kelly Kerrigan, the town conservation manager, has, and it is frightening to see how much water poured through there. And it went right through and over and around all of this property that you're looking at. So we're just want to have a word of caution to the commission to be really sensitive and careful about how this is going to affect the wetlands there, how these filters are going to be handled, if there's any blasting. I can't imagine what will happen to the wells that are just right there in this area. Who would you like me to pass this to? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Shirley Halberson. I live at 650 Peters Lane. My property is the one that's bordering this property. And my main concern is the water level has increased. I've lived there since 1962. And when we first moved in, we could walk to the back of our property. Now it's a lake back there. In fact, there's even been ducks and nesting back there. And my concern is when you start blasting all of the massive rocks, what is it going to do to our wells and our septic tanks? My well is right in the front yard, and there's massive blasting that's going to have to be taken. And we're just concerned about losing our water. And even if city water came in, we could never afford to connect to city water. So that's all, my main concern. I'm totally against this development. Thank you.
Could you spell your last name for me?
H-O-L-V as in Victor, E-R-S-O-N.
Thank you.
And my husband's name is Harlan, H-A-R-L-Y-N.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Anyone else?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Florek. I maintain a private practice of law here in Stratford, but I am also appointed as one of the assistant town attorneys for the town of Stratford. I come before you tonight, I can't say to actually oppose, but simply to voice some general concerns that the town has, which we feel merit some further investigation. As Mr. Dancho said, and I think we all know him, but for the record, he's got an eminent background in animal habitat and animal lives. As he voiced some concerns about the effect of the habitat by this project, I think merits further investigation. I also think that aspects pointed out in Ms. Kerrigan's staff report raise questions that must be answered. So what I'm asking you to do tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is to hold open the public hearing until your next meeting on September 15th. Based on what we've heard tonight, the town can then assess whether to retain experts to address some of these issues, experts to review the plans and the specs that were provided by Mr. Bjorklund and the applicant, and to provide information that you will need in order to properly assess whether this project meets the criteria set forth in sections 5 and section 10.2 of your regulations. So I would request that that the public hearing be held open until the next meeting for that purpose. And in support of that, I will say that it doesn't prejudice the applicant in any way, because we all know that there's a statutorily imposed deadline for you to decide the issue by September the 16th. So the information that it will be necessary for you to make that decision will be available to you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else? All right. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Mr. McCann, are you going to ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner McCann. Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I had a number of questions in regard to the blasting and the acid rock conditions. I understand that you have this report. I read the report. I also had the opportunity of having an office about half a mile away from this particular property for over a decade. We also, while I was there, had a construction go on. The Tennessee gas line goes close to that area. And during one of their retrofits of their pipe, did some rock work. And it wasn't even blasting, Mr. Chairman, it was ripping, which is significantly different. I won't go into the details. It doesn't use explosive, it just uses mechanical destruction. At which point, there was a significant change in the iron-fixing bacteria, which is a relic of the acid rock drainage. The weathered rock that is on this property has been exposed for centuries. It does not surprise me one bit that they don't see any remnants of staining or otherwise, because it has been completely depleted over the years, particularly with the increase in the, I should say the decrease in the pH of rain. There's an old saying, gold is where you find it. Well, fool's gold is also where you find it. And by the way, iron pyrite is also called fool's gold. I don't have complete confidence in the fact that we are not going to have some problem with that. And it would have been nice to have the expert here to give us a little bit more information. But without that, we have to consider it on our own. The other thing that while I was stationed in Roosevelt Forest, I obviously had an opportunity several times a day to go up and down Peters Lane. And at which point, at the proper season, there were many occasions where we've had the turtle crossing the road to get to the other side, obviously. And being who I am, I normally would stop my car and see if I could at least find the turtle as he got to the other side of the road. I'm guessing that 99% of the time that I tried to do that, I could not find that turtle. So I have really kind of apprehension about the ability of individuals finding turtles and relocating them to any satisfaction. They're very difficult to find. Even if you think you're within 10 feet of them, they're very difficult to find. Very elusive animals. In light of the fact that we are going to obviously keep this hearing open, when there's a number of things that we're going to have to look at in the existing record, I'm going to defer the remainder of my questions till that opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sir.
If I can respond, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Chris Smith, I would respectfully request that Commissioner I'm sorry, yes, if you could provide your list of questions so that I can relate them to any of our experts so that they can be more responsive at the continued meeting. The report is dated in May. All of the material that we went through this evening has been on file with this commission for quite some time now. And it seems to me, since the commission, through asking my client to do certain things, which my client turned around and did at your request, is now pushed up against the deadline. And I heard from Attorney Floric, who I have the utmost respect for, saying, well, why don't you push it off to the next meeting, which we all know is going to be the final meeting under the statutory deadlines, where we might be hearing things for the first time. And quite frankly, somebody who's been doing this for 37 years, and this is all I do, it does raise the level of suspicion. And in particular, again, if there are questions that Commissioner McCain, if you do have them for for WSP or any of our other experts, I would respectfully request that you share them with us this evening, as I would anybody who else has questions, as opposed to waiting for what everybody anticipates to be the final meeting, where we won't be able to respond to anything other than at that particular moment in time. So if there's additional information that you didn't see in the report, or if you have questions on, we'd be more than happy to generate that information.
I will
for
be
you.
more than happy to generate those questions, but as you, I'm sure, aware, Counselor, that when you go to question somebody, it's so much better to have them right there in front of you, where you can have point and counterpoint with that individual rather than having it more remote. I don't think it falls into the realm of hearsay evidence, but it's, it's best to have them, that you can talk to them one-to-one. So that's why I'm asking that. If you mind, just shift my gears a bit to you and to the applicant. The alternative that has been shown is basically just a small shift of the existing proposal. One of the things that we normally look at in terms of alternatives is simply scope.
I'm sorry?
Scope.
Scope, I'm sorry, thank you.
I mean, it appears that you're stuck on 4-lot subdivision. Obviously, I think smaller scope would be much more acceptable. But there was no alternative to that considered, was there?
I think more lots were considered, and
More lots were considered?
came back with the 4. You heard 5. Yes, and this is a feasible improvement alternative. It's a 10.
All right.
It's a 10-acre parcel of land, and it's 4 lots.
Okay.
This is maybe more.
Dr. Chess.
This is more maybe an internal question, but I heard you refer to the rains as being able to, the runoff being able to be managed for 5, 10, and even 25-year downpours that we might see. But is that still a relevant measure in this time of climate change? I think the 25-year rains may be happening every year now. And we're going to be having a downpour that begins tonight. I'm just not sure how relevant that is anymore when we're considering drainage.
I'll ask Mr. Bjorklund to respond to that, but I think those are just standards that are in your regulatory requirements, not necessarily this commission, but from zoning and planning. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. Dave Bjorklund, the engineer for the applicant. The way we have adjusted our computations for runoff is that the State Department of Transportation has issued updated rainfall charts, where they have increased the amount of rainfall that we're using for a 25-year storm. So there has already, and this has probably been 5 to 7 years now that we're working with these new rainfall charts.
But you raise an excellent point. They have been taken into consideration by the state.
So they were adjusted about 5 to 7 years ago in that range.
Right.
And is there anticipated an additional adjustment? Because I think that the climate change that's coming upon us may be a little bit more aggressive than we initially thought.
I have no idea
Thank you.
if DOT is
Sure.
working. The change that was made, in my opinion, as somebody who's been doing this for over 40 years, was more than significant. The rainfall amounts that were added are quite high compared to what we had been dealing with for the first 35 years I was practicing.
So percentage-wise, what was the percentage difference, would you say, between where you were 20 years ago and what's in the regs today? Is it a 15% increase? Is it
I've never looked at it that way. One of the significant differences in the new rainfall charts is that they're adjusted for elevation. The rainfall that you get at the coastline is less than what you will get up at Peters Lane or what you will get when you get up into the White Hills of Shelton. So it's not just, okay, we took the 25-year storm and we increased it 15%. It's also been increased for reflecting the affected terrain on rainfall.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and I have major concerns like Commissioner McCann has about the blasting in the area and the disturbance with the other wells and septic in the area. This is a major concern with blasting. You have to control that, or somebody has to know what the vibration is going to cause in the surrounding area. Blasting is a major effort, okay? This is not, a firecracker that you just throw out on 4th of July. There's some major concerns here with that. And I agree. We need more information on the blasting and what's going to happen.
Thank you.
Before motion, I heard the word motion up there. I was just going to respond to this commissioner's brief comments, just briefly. And if it is continued, we'll address it in more depth. But I just would like to point out that any blasting, it's anticipated that it will be done by mechanical means, will just be associated with the foundations. And I just would like to respectfully point out that the blasting, the testimony from our expert, Mr. Klein, as to any particular blasting or rock removal issues relate to potential impacts with wetlands, which is obviously the jurisdiction of this commission, unlike planning or zoning that might look at some of those issues relative to blasting. And more importantly, I don't know if you're familiar with Split Rock up in Shelton, but I worked on those approvals, and there was a lot of blasting there. There are state regulations that deal with that, and everything along those lines is regulated by, it's my understanding, your fire marshal here in town, who would be regulating any of that would happen. So there are regulations that do govern that from a public health safety standpoint. I respectfully submit they're not in your factors for consideration in section 10.2, nor in the Connecticut General Statutes 22A41, which are the statutory factors for consideration in your authorization. It's kind of like your enabling review legislation. But good questions, and if it ends up being continued, we'll respond to it a little bit more than I am this evening. But again, I just wanted to point that out at the outset, the distinction between those types of issues that might be relevant with a planning application with the subdivision and just to remind the commission that what we're looking at here are potential impacts to the wetlands, which we did have testimony on. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to respond. But it's a good question and very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to suspend this public hearing and continue it next month.
September 18th, 16th? It is the 15th?
15th.
15th at 7 p.m., correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd just like to state that for the record.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your attention and your questions, and we
Thank you
look
for your
forward
time.
to seeing you on the 15th, hopefully without mask. Take care. Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to call the regular meeting to order at 7:55. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the
Mr. Chairman,
last meeting.
why don't you allow them to leave
Take
before,
those off and leave them here.
allow them to leave the
You can hear it.
You're going to have to excuse me. Besides being old, I'm deaf, and I have an ear infection. And I can't read your lips.
I can see all right, I can't read them. That's fine. They can hear, it's a public meeting, what's the difference? I'm not home. How long you been? What time did you go to work this morning? 7 o'clock?
I actually do.
That's a long time.
But usually 7 a.m.
All right, we're going to start. Let's go. All right, so, first order of business, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any corrections, deletions, additions? We have a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Mr. Waite, seconded. Cinto, all in favor?
Aye.
Old business, this 4-lot subdivision. Need a motion to put that back on the table pending continued
Make a
public
motion,
hearing?
put it back on the table, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second the
Mr.
motion.
Waite, all in favor?
Aye.
New business, none. Staff report, Kelly? We need volume on that thing. Take mine.
All right, so I still have, I believe it is 5 performance bonds under review. I'm still waiting on various information from those permit holders, so I'm not recommending the release of those performance bonds quite yet. And other than that, there were no enforcement actions since our last meeting. However, I did have one administrative application for Sikorsky to conduct remedial activities within the upland review area of Far Mill River. And that's in coordination with a larger remedial project that they have going on for soils remediation. And that's all.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question of the administrator, of the superintendent, excuse me? How many of the plaques have we sold? Are all these people putting up plaques?
The folks that we have, where we have conservation easements that designate placards on the plans have all purchased placards.
I'm just a rebel.
The last bit of placards I sold was for Lindquist Drive. They purchased some. And then Joe Owen on Nicky Lane Circle, he purchased placards as well. Other than that, we haven't had any folks installing them, so they haven't been requested. But so they are putting them up? Yep, they're putting them up and they're being used.
Okay. Commissioners Forum, I got something. So, last week I sent the mayor a letter explaining to her that I spent last winter in Florida, and I'm going to spend this winter in Florida. Last winter, since we didn't have any meetings in person, it didn't impact this position. As of now, we're going to have in-person meetings, and I said to her, therefore, I'll resign because it's not fair to be the chairman and not be around. She replied, as a chairman, you can opt to have all virtual meetings. I don't think that that is necessarily a good idea, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the matter. I don't think it's fair to the commission. I don't think it's fair to the applicants to make them do remotely because, as you just pointed out, Mr. McCann, it's nice when you look at somebody to ask them a question and to have him answer you as opposed to being through a tube or something like that. So I think you can't be the chairman and not go to 6 meetings in a row. I don't think.
Well, Tom, what I'm thinking is you certainly could remain chairman. The vice chairman can run the meetings. You could just take a leave of absence for a few months.
I don't know if you can do that. Well, because if you take a leave of absence, the seat is still occupied, but it's not occupied.
Yeah.
Somebody else can't be there. I don't know.
That would have to be articled in our bylaws, and unfortunately, our bylaws actually say if you miss 3 meetings.
Unexcused.
I don't know if that.
Our bylaws, I think, say,
huh?
I think it says 3 meetings and
then you're gone.
And you're gone.
Yeah.
Because on this commission,
but
and
I
other
know it's
commission,
unexcused.
we've had people fight to get on the commission and never go to a meeting.
Well, see, Tom, you're in a difficult spot because unexcused, you'd have to be excused by the chairman, but you are the chairman. So that's what that's where it's.
I can throw my.
It's like a catch-22.
It is a catch-22, right?
So I. I don't know.
No.
I think our bylaws note a chair and a vice chair.
We have a chair and a vice chair.
But unfortunately, we have to, because we went through the whole exercise of redoing the bylaws and putting them in place, they are indeed just that. They are you know.
I mean, I don't. I'll be here September and October, and I could make this effective November 1st or whatever, so.
I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that that you hold off on your resignation. No, wait a minute. We may all.
I'm asking here now. Maybe next week she says all the meetings are virtual.
If it hits the fan again, like we're there's more closures. I mean, New Zealand closed the whole country last week.
So I'm not going to do anything right now, but
who knows what's going to happen? We may have another mandate that says everything is going to have to be virtual. So we want to keep you, Mr. Chairman. So even though you are who you are, we still want to keep you.
Maybe my ears will get better too. Who knows?
Yeah, Tom, I would.
All right, so that's all I got. So we'll hold off. We won't do anything
wait.
right
because
now.
you
Hold
don't know
off
what's
on
gonna
it.
happen, right?
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Cito, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.